All right, welcome back. Happy Friday. So this is so it's August 16th and this article is August 14th. This is talking about the 13F filings, and as you can see, we're seeing Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley taking stakes in the US spot Bitcoin ETFs in quarter two. Right? And one of them, I think it's Goldman Sachs, yeah, it says $418 million in several of the recently launched ETFs. Okay. So I mean, 13F filings on the 14th, we're seeing kind of, some dips in the market. What's going on? Well, I mean, a little bit of fun, but what we're actually looking at is a buying of the ETFs and selling of the spot. And we're getting to a point in the market where most people, they're not ready. They're going to see all this news and they're going to get worried. So this is a bit of news, right? Bitcoin Magazine posted this earlier today. $34 billion Sculptor Capital doubled its Bitcoin ETFs holdings. I mean, doubled it. Think about that. First they come slowly, and then all at once. Vivek Classic says $9 billion in Bitcoin shorts are going to be liquidated at $68,000. Now, obviously, a $10,000 move, right, takes a little bit of work. And by that point, many will close their positions, which is effectively the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it's close. And so what happens here is, I mean, it's going to be a war that the shorts are going to have to counter. And they could try, but I think they might lose. And why is that? Well, this is interesting. So we're going to listen to this clip. This is the BRICS News group. They're sharing this.
Today, the emergency committee met and advised me that, in its view, the situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. I have accepted that advice.
And this was 2 days ago.
The detection and rapid spread of a new clade of mpox in eastern DRC.
Now, do you guys remember what happened with COVID?
Its detection in neighboring countries that had not previously reported mpox, and the potential for further spread within Africa and beyond is very worrying.
Let's see if they show the map.
In addition to other outbreaks of other clades of mpox in other parts of Africa, it's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
Okay. Well, from what we know, a lot of the times, first, markets have kind of experienced this once already, so it might not be the greatest drop in history. However, a lot of the times, this tends to lead people to start speculating and getting a little bit shaky. And if anything did happen, then it could be a drop enough to liquidate some longs, for example. Okay. Now here's where things start to get interesting, right? So what did we know as of yesterday? Nearly $500 million Goldman Sachs Bitcoin. We saw Morgan Stanley. States are also buying Bitcoin in the hundreds of millions of dollars each. We saw Norway and the Swiss bank buy MicroStrategy. I know the Swiss bank did it. I was surprised. I know the Swiss bank, yeah, they do this stuff, but like Norway, wow. And then we find out that the SEC is also approving a 1.75x leveraged MicroStrategy ETF. I think it's by Defiance. Does this make sense to you guys? Do you understand what's happening here? So let me just fill in the gaps for those who don't. One of the biggest groups is buying 500 million in Bitcoin, owns it effectively 400 to 500 million. States are individually buying it in the hundreds of millions. Norway and Swiss bank buy MicroStrategy. Now, do you understand how they buy it? Well, they use their own cash, right? And how do they make cash? They print it. And then on top of that, we're seeing the capability for those of us who have the risk tolerance to start doing some leverage plays. On MicroStrategy, no less. My God. Like, so we're seeing effectively the beginning of the printing to buy Bitcoin. States makes complete sense. Pension funds, state funds, Goldman Sachs. Wow. So we're getting to a point where, at least in my opinion, every US state should own at this point like 200 million in Bitcoin. That's my hope. Not they currently have, but the hope is that they can compete on a scale where they can at least secure whoever the people of the state that they're, representing for the long time, for the long term. Now, I wrote this a little bit, like some time ago. I was living yesterday. Everyone affected by inflation and rampant government spending know that we in Bitcoin have your back. Just, you should know that. We're working towards a better future. We'll build it for everyone, fair and decentralized. FYI, I don't see these other precious metal maxis building the future. What do I mean by this? So I'll make another video later on stacks and Bitcoin DeFi. But even if you didn't look at that for now, which is probably where all of this is going to go anyway, on stacks. But just in the idea of what Bitcoin has achieved so far and what it is continuing to achieve, simply in its vast array of developers who are coming to market. We're building infrastructure, right? Everything from things like Lightning to, basic, every sort of tool you can imagine to make it easier and that can augment itself to Bitcoin or attach itself to Bitcoin and benefit off of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin can then benefit off of it by bringing in more users and liquidity and utility. That's happening. Now, obviously, gold has often been praised for having utility, right? Which, I'll be honest, it's very lackluster in my opinion. I mean, the utility is kind of a gray area. I mean, obviously, in certain use cases, it's very useful, right? Electronics, certain types of miscellaneous uses. But for jewelry, not gonna lie, it's alright. You can get bored of it. Now, what we know for sure is that they're getting ready to print. Now, obviously, it's not the same kind of printing. We're talking about cutting rates, which is effectively printing, right? Cutting rates lowers the interest rates for people to borrow, and when people borrow more, and especially when they can't pay it back, right? You're adding more circulation of M2, and you can't really sustain that for very long. And just on that alone, if they were to lower interest rates, they get more people to borrow, therefore more capital in the market. If they raise interest rates, they probably collapse the banks because no one can borrow or pay back their loans, or loan terms get shifted. It gets crazy. And then we see this, right? This was just icing on the cake, right? Apple opens NFC payment chip to third parties for the first time making Bitcoin and crypto tap to pay on iPhone possible. GG. I'm just saying, native Apple, I mean, they're basically telling you, hey, look, guys, we might want to get in this Bitcoin game. I think we know our place. I think we have all the users. You know, we're the touch point. All of you apps, businesses, companies, yeah, you know where to reach your users now. Come here. And they might come. So the rest of the world is seeing this shit. They're like, hey, whoa, hey guys, I thought you said, you know, we weren't going to be lowering rates that soon, or, you know, things were, you know, we're waiting to see. But meanwhile, all this incredible stuff is coming out. Prices are a little bit low, but the Fed isn't that dovish when they should be, considering that banks are struggling. Clients for those banks, people who are living on debt, are struggling. And then we understand that they are starting to build these tools for us. They're getting it ready for the all-in. Like, just understand what a leveraged long MicroStrategy ETF means. If you're telling us you've already got enough MicroStrategy, and then you tell us you're longing it, you're like, there are bulls. Some people want meme coins. Some people want altcoins. Some people just want to take Bitcoin to the max. And it looks like, you know, a couple countries, couple MicroStrategy ETFs, it looks like some baselines are being set. Who knows? Now, this was today, right? This was like, what, an hour ago? Less than 45 minutes ago? Elon Musk says the government causes inflation because it can just print more money to spend more than it earns. Think about it. We know the government's printing money. We know it's spending more than it should. We know it has terrible ways of accounting for who it goes to and what should be paid for what. We also know that most of the people don't understand how inflation works. Again, they're looking at prices. When the government's telling you, hey, these guys are charging too much, we're going to force them to lower their rates. Does that not sound a little too controlling to you? Like, wait a minute. You're telling us these private companies that offer a product on the market that people get to decide to use, or they can instead make their own. You're going to decide to force these companies to lower their prices? What? How? And even just saying that sounds awful. Like, even if on the back end you were to force the, say, farmers for supermarkets to lower their prices like, what the hell? What the hell? How are the farmers going to afford it? And then what, you're going to subsidize the farmers, so you're just going to print the money anyway. What was the point? So, I mean, obviously, we have something of a huge election year coming up. And I think a lot of people don't understand the severity of it, because this is kind of a make or break election as far as what we can see this cycle. And what do I mean by this? So if we were to see Kamala Harris, what I expect is a lot of the potentials for war and FUD around war will be very high and heavy, and it would very much affect the markets. And what I mean by that is it would generally lead towards something like I mean, you don't want to say it like this, but effectively, if we print and encourage war, we're going to see it. And the worry I have is that we are much more willing to print for other countries under Kamala Harris than under Donald Trump. Now, that's a big deal. One, because it could actually lead to war, but two, because what tends to happen is if the right people are attacked, it could spiral more FUD, which just ruins your average everyday investor. Now, obviously, you've hardened investors. You don't look twice at this. You're just like, oh, okay, tell us 2 weeks from now what's happening, right? But these younger investors or these immature investors, I mean, they have their own issues. And so what I'm saying here in this tweet, I think is really important for people to understand. A lack of circulation of knowledge, it breeds confusion and opportunities for manipulation. If you have a pool of people, a populace, that a few of them understand and a few of them don't, or a certain amount understand, a certain amount don't, right? That's what I'm saying. When you spread information. Now, let's take an example. If you pass a law affecting 1/10 of a country, but 9/10 are told a different story, the 10th can massively profit or be completely swept under the rug. And what do I mean by this? Say you passed a law that benefited 1/10 of the country in a very specific way. Now, obviously, say it's cheating the system. Say it's not a good thing. Well, to the 9/10, if you spun a story saying, hey, these 1/10 needed it, or hey, these 1/10, they did it on their own. They built their bootstraps up and they got it. They deserved it. 9/10 would never think twice. Massively profit from the 1/10. And they're never going to complain. Why would they tell people like, hey, by the way, And if people did find out, they'd eventually argue, yeah, it's the trade-off for us being the 1/10. Now, say you were to harm them. Not harm them, too badly, but the idea is you were to apply some negative law towards them. Then, if you were to tell the 9/10 that they deserved it, or this is what they got for being there, or this is exactly what is a good thing, what a good thing would look like, and you give the 9/10 a reason to not think that what you're doing is bad. Honestly, even if those 1/10 start to complain, the 9/10 won't believe them. And so what you get here is it's a pretty obvious, fair point. Nobody has the answer. Seriously. In reality, you're just being told to go do what these guys want. And it's up to you to decide what's right and what's wrong, what's real and what's not. Because a lot of the time, what you're going to see is they're going to be offering privileges in the form of, hey, we need to print money, and we know a group of people, they could probably use it. They're not going to tell that many people, and heck, it's going to benefit them. And the way it's going to benefit them, it's going to be so good to them that they're not going to want to tell people. And those who do know won't want to tell others as well. So it stops that gap. But just know that the 9/10, if they ever were to figure out that say you were just straight printing money for these 1/10, it would be horrifying. Because the amount you can print is not finite. It's infinite. The amount you can take away is finite. It can affect that 1/10, but it can only affect that 1/10. And a lot of the time, your 9/10 populations will let that shit get swept under the rug. But when you have an infinite profiteering in that 1/10, and then the 9/10 figure it out that you're subsidizing horrid behavior and they just couldn't do anything about it. Like, you're hearing cases, I don't know if they're true, but like, I know New York's doing it. They're giving like hundreds of families, migrant families, money. I don't know if they're here, on what status they're here, but I mean, the homeless and the veteran don't get that, right? And then on top of that, if we're talking about, all of the cases we're hearing with what's happening in the rest of the United States with, illegal immigrants coming in and potentially getting food stamps in high amounts. You're seeing things like, housing potentially. We're worried. I mean, one worry you could have, Kamala Harris, is that, for a lot of people, just to win the votes, she could be, passing some stuff where, it could affect that 1/10 very, very well. Very, very well. And that's a huge 10% vote. I mean, and we would never know. It's just a matter of who's paying attention to what's being offered, right? If she says, hey, we're going to subsidize your housing for up to X amount, and only your housing costs that X amount, I think you've won the lottery. By Kamala. Now, I'm not gonna say if that's, something she's doing or not, wink wink, but it seems like it, and we don't know. So keep these things in mind. It's pretty much who he says, or he says, she says. We don't actually know what these guys are planning or how they're going to use this, right? Kamala could be a great person. Trump could be a great person. We have no idea what they're going to do in the end. But their promises to win the votes do kind of tell us who they're acquiescing to. Not the people, right? We know they're never acquiescing to the people, right? It's who these people are customers of, right? Who we subscribe to, those overlords. They're the ones that these guys are acquiescing to. And so it's hard for us to see it, but you got to keep your eyes and ears open. Focus on what is morally right, because that is what forces these overlords to get in line. When you don't budge unless it's for the right thing. And yeah, that's my time. Make sure you check out some other videos. I'm trying to get better at this. I'm trying to get consistent. Try out different formats too. What I want to do is provide people just my perspective. These are all opinions, not financial advice. I have actually no training in economics. I'm a tech guy at best. So what you guys want to think about on your own is yours. I'm just providing you some perspective when I see shit, and I could be making this all up in my head, and none of this could be real, right? But it's just a bunch of different leading indicators to me, signals. When I see all of these states buying, when I see all these countries buying, I see them buying MicroStrategy, leverage plays, increasing leverage ETFs. I'm literally seeing other countries. South Korea is buying the ETF. I know that now. today, I believe they announced that. Literally, literally, the markets aren't like, just the price isn't what you should be looking at. It's what people are actually doing, not what they say is happening or what their opinions are. I mean, it's what they're actually doing. So your opinions and your prices don't matter. I'll tweet that, right? Tweet that live for you guys right here. Your opinions and your prices don't matter. What you do matters. I don't know. Add a comma. No, don't add a comma. And so that's my time. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like. You know, I want you guys to see, you know, just a little bit more ahead into and deeper into what's going on, and hopefully not get at least fooled, right? I don't mind people coming up with conjectures and then battle testing them in their head, right? You don't gotta bet all your life savings on it just like that. That's crazy, right? You guys should test your thoughts and let them die out in your head. But like, you should know the possibilities or what people could be thinking or what they are thinking. These guys are, all of this in reality is how things tend to go. It's just a matter of, you know, how strong are the forces? Are there enough outside variables? Is there an extra random variable, a wave of force gonna come in and push the tides to another, you know, entire different system being created, right? Like, it's very possible that this whole monkeypox thing becomes real, or at COVID level. It's very possible it doesn't, right? Now, what do I think with the states buying it? It's very possible that every state ends up owning Bitcoin, or 30 states end up owning Bitcoin. It's possible that only just these few do. And so what you guys have to understand is the logic and the reasoning that drive these people are very much human. So you guys have to kind of put that variable human, you know, factor into your predictions, into the way you think. All right. Thanks again. Happy Friday. Peace.